Hi.
Hello, good evening. Yes, hi. So first, to complete something we had begun last week, and we didn't finish off entirely. So I'll just repeat that specific topic and then situation, then we'll go into the case-by-case study that we have, that we normally do, and learn from practical issues. So, and this completion is also very practical. We had discussed returning things into their compartments or to their location when there is a mixture of things, and you want to return them back into their compartment. So we spoke about silverware that is all together because it's all bunched together because it dried up. So we said we can't take it one by one and put it into its compartment in the drawer because that's boer. And we're not doing it for immediate use because we're putting it away instead of using it for the table. We would like to pick out all the forks in order to set the table, and setting the table is within an hour of the actual meal or within the time that's necessary to prepare for that meal. If you have many guests, you may need 2 hours to prepare. So within 2 hours, it's okay to set the table, but not earlier than that. As we said, going to shul doesn't count, and so on and so forth, all that we spoke about. So we said one way is it's still permissible to put them back in their compartment, besides throwing them, tossing them all around and on the counter or on a table, and then when they're no longer a bunch together, you can take whatever you like and put in place. Besides that trick, there's another way of doing it, and that is by drying them one by one. If they're still wet to some extent, so you could choose. You can't pick and choose which you want to dry, because then even the choosing to dry would be borer. Rather, you just take out whatever comes out in your hand, you dry it. Now that you're drying it, it turns out that you didn't take it out in order to return it to place. You took it out in order to dry it. Now that it's dry in your hand, it's alone. It's away from the bunch. It's no longer within a bunch. So then it can be put into its right compartment in the drawer. So that we said last time. Now we said we would complete this with other situations of such that have a mixture and we want to return them into place. So this is in the Shmirat Shabbos Kilchasa, the very last points of chapter 3 in the book of Shmirat Shabbos Kilchasa. And the last section discusses this issue. So it says the following: books that are all stacked up or piled up or one on top of the other, a whole mix up of books on the table, and one would like to return them back onto the shelf in their different locations. Is that a possibility? So here, again, the same problem appears again, that you cannot just pick and choose which book you would like to return to which place, because then you're sorting the books. But in this case, the Shmirat Shabbos Kilchasa does allow to take whatever comes out first. You just don't pick and choose which book you're looking to return to its place. Whatever is first, whatever it's on top of the pile, you have it in your hand now, and now you can return to its place. Why is that different than by the sakum, by the silverware, where we said you can't just blindly take anything that comes out into your hand and you say, now I have a fork, let's put it into place. That's not possible. You have to dry them first, meaning you have to do something in between and not just take out whatever comes out randomly and put it into place. That's not considered less borer. So why? How come by a book it is? So this I had asked Rabbi Phil Malka a few months or even years ago, what the difference is. And actually, adding to this, so maybe I may recall now, I tried to recall what the difference was. I'm almost there, but I'm not 100% sure. Just add another example. If you have toys scattered around in a way that they're sort of bunched, people would perceive it as a mixture, as a whole mix-up of toys on the floor. So there too, he says you cannot just return them to their place, not only by choosing what you want to return, but even by randomly taking something in your hand and then putting it into the closet. It's still not allowed. So it's similar to the silverware. You can't even randomly take something in your hand and then put it into place. Whereas by books, we can. The difference, he said, was, by the way, by toys, if they're all balagan, you could just take out randomly one of the toys and you can give your child to play with it a second. The moment he plays with it, then again, it turns out that you didn't pick and choose which you would like from the pile, you just took out randomly. You gave it to him to play with. He plays with it a few seconds, and then you can take it from his hand and put it into place, because then that's like drying the silverware. Or with the books, had it not been permitted to take the books randomly and put them back into the shelf, you could have also took out a book randomly, read from it a few words, and then put it in place. Anytime you have a station in between to do something with what you've taken out randomly, not took out randomly, the moment you have a stop in between that and returning it into its place, then it's okay. But by books, he allows returning them after taking them randomly from the pile. He allows you to turn them onto the shelf, even if you don't use the book in between. The books is like an exception to the other two cases here of the silverware, cutlery, and the toys. What we don't allow if you're not going to make a stop in between. The difference was, if I recall correctly, Phil Malka explained that by books, it had to do something with the fact that there isn't a set place for every single toy in the closet, unlike books where there are specific locations where each book is put back into place most of the time. Why does that change the fact that when you're taking it out of the pile, you're sorting it into place? What does it matter if you find place for the toy or you have a place for the book? There's a set place for the book. Toys normally don't have exact places where to be. They're just shoved into the closet. That was the answer in general. I don't remember why that makes a difference. Okay, I'm not sure now, but that's the halacha. Halacha is that in most cases, you can't just pick and even randomly lift up something from within the pile, and then while it's in your hand now alone, you put it into place. That's not allowed in most cases, except for books. Rather, you would have to have a station in between, a stop in between, do something with what you just picked out randomly, and then you can return it into its place, because it wasn't in order to sort. You took it out in order to use it in some way, and then it's in your hand separate, and then you can put it into place. Okay, so that's the idea of just to complete last week. Now let's go on, unless someone has a specific question. We'll go on to discuss case by case in this chapter of Borer. After last week, we did the introduction, generally what Borer consists of. Now we can go into the details. So the first case is a case where one would like to squeeze out oil from food. Let's say you have a schnitzel that's very oily. So you want to give it a squeeze and let the oil out onto a serviette, a napkin, or into the sink. You want to get rid of the oil that it's soaked with and get it healthier that way. It's much less healthy to eat altogether fried foods, but definitely the oil that was fried is very unhealthy. So can we do that on Shabbat? Now, in this case, we have two issues to discuss. One is borer, which we'll soon see how we deal with that, and one is dash. Dash is the malacha that they used to have, we need to do in order to separate the kernel of wheat from the chaff. So you press on it, you press firmly on it. They used to have oxes or cows or donkeys walk, trampede on the wheat stalks. And this way, from pressure, from squeezing it, the chaff fell off and the seed remained, it peeled off the chaff from the seed. So that's called dash, which really lends itself to squeezing every fruit from its juice, which we mustn't do on Shabbat. We mustn't squeeze juice out of fruit on Shabbat because of dash. It's the issue of dash. So how do we deal with, unless, by the way, if we already discussed squeezing, unless it's onto food. We're allowed to squeeze a lemon onto a salad or onto fish on Shabbat, because when it goes from food to food, and we don't consider it a juice at all. It's called uchla de ifrat. It's like cutting away a piece of the food because it's from solid to solid, so we don't care for the fact that in the air in between, it was liquid. So that's why we're allowed. But if it's just into an empty cup, or even a cup filled with water and you want to squeeze lemon into it to make it taste like lemonade or something, you can't do that because then it remains a liquid. And now you've extracted the liquid from the solid. That's sochet, that's dash. That's what we're not allowed to do. So in this case, where the oil got absorbed into the schnitzel, is that considered dash? So the answer is no. From the point of view of dash squeezing, it's okay. How come? Because the Shulchan Aruch tells us that when we cook or fry vegetables, so the water and oil that came in from the outside and got absorbed into the fruits or vegetables, that water or that liquid, whether it's water, oil, whatever it is, that liquid was a liquid already beforehand. It wasn't the first time that we're squeezing an orange and getting out the juice. That's considered like a creation of something. We've created the orange juice or the lemon juice or whatever it may be. We created it on Shabbat. That's a creation. That's what we mustn't do. That's dash. But this oil or water that got absorbed into the vegetables or schnitzel because of frying or cooking them in oil or in water, that was already a liquid before it got absorbed. So when we get it out, it's not like we're creating something. We're just getting it back to the original situation it was. So that's not dash. Dash is only if it's done freshly, newly, for the first time. So, and also besides this point that it was already liquid in a liquid form before it got absorbed. Besides that, another interesting definition for dash is that it's only dash if you would like to use the juice that came out, the liquid that came out. If the liquid goes to waste, you're throwing it, it goes to the garbage. It's not meant to be used, and it's not dash. The whole point of extracting the kernels from the chaff, from the peel, is in order to use the kernels of wheat to make bread. So when we're disposing of the liquid, that's the exact opposite of dash. Dash is to use the liquid that came out, and here we're disposing of that liquid, so it's not dash. So for two reasons, it's not a problem of dash. How about borer? The fact that we're separating good from bad or bad from good. We'll soon discuss what this is, good from bad or bad from good. It's hard to tell. We're squeezing the schnitzel. Are we taking the schnitzel away from the oil away from the schnitzel? That depends on which is good, the good from bad. So in this case, there's a dispute amongst poskim. It definitely, by definition, this act of squeezing out something from its absorption or pouring out unnecessary or non-wanted food or liquid, solid or liquid from a pot that some of it you do not want and you want to get rid of it, you want to dispose of it. All those cases, that's considered bad from good. You're separating the bad from the good. How come? Because your action is to pour it out or squeeze it out. Your action is to get this out of here, separate this away from the food, from the good food. So your action proves that you're extracting bad, you're separating bad from good, pushing it away, sort of, disposing of it and dealing with it, and not taking the good from the bad. But that's only true when you're pouring or squeezing. So you're showing your action shows that you're trying to get rid of what you're pouring out or what you're squeezing out, pouring away or squeezing out. So that's considered bad from good, and therefore we should have not been able to do this. How come? So there is an opinion like that it's borer, and we cannot do it. Wait, this opinion yet.
But what about if you just placed it on a paper towel? Because then you're not squeezing it, but let's say you just place it on a paper towel.
Right.
Flip it over. You're not squeezing it, but let's say, I don't know, sometimes like you can buy the salads, the aubergine salads, and they're like dripping with oil. And and if you just put like an aubergine on the serviette, it's like a ton of oil comes off already.
Right.
But you haven't, let's say, squeezed it.
Right. Exactly. So that's exactly the other situation, which is not problem. It's not a problem. You're allowed to do so. Why? Because, again, by definition, by borer, we hold that when you have two factors in the mixture, or 3 or 4, it doesn't matter how many, and you let it be in a way that some falls up, some goes away, so some of it gets separated by just the mere fact that it's situated somewhere, exactly like your example, when you just put it on a paper towel, so, or a napkin or a serviette. So then we consider it good from bad. How come? What stays on top is considered that's being separated from what goes down. That's the definition. Like what we said before, when you squeeze or pour, then even the stuff that goes away sort of falls out and goes down. That's considered separating bad. That's considered separating it from what you're left in your hand. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. Sometimes we're squeezing something in order to use what we're squeezing away. Then it's dash in any case. But by borer, it would be good from bad if the stuff that we want to leave in our hands is not useful. But when we're just laying it on some surface, for example, if you want to use an actual misanenet, a net sort of, better word, that where you sift, a sifter, you want to sift, you can't do flour, of course, because on Shabbat it's muktzah to sift flour. Flour is inedible. But if you want to sift some food that the good remains on top and the bad goes down, you have to think of an example. Let's say I'll give you like this. Let's say you have a bunch of fruit that has sand on it. I get rid of the sand. Well, normally you just wash it, but if you put it on a sifter and you let the sand sift down, so that's considered good from bad, because what remains on top is what was removed from what fell down. That's by definition. So,
would that be the same with chickpeas and draining things using sifter?
Right. Oh, no. So now that's all from the point of view good from bad. But as you recall last week, we said there are three details within borer that all three, each one of them separately makes it a problem of borer. So if you're using a sifter or a drainer, then that's a kli. That's a utensil that helps you separate. So that won't work, even with the sand, the example I gave before, won't work because of that. But it would not be an issue from the point of view of good from bad. It's not helpful because it's still borer, because using a utensil that's meant to separate creates the separation. So anyhow, you wouldn't be able to do it because of the utensil. But from the point of view of good from bad, that would be so exactly the example that Juliet brought is exactly it. When you just place the oily food and you allow the oil to get absorbed in a paper towel, that's fine, because that's considered separating good from bad. What stays on top or remains on top is what's being separated. What goes down is the leftover, sort of. So you're doing good from bad, that's fine. And you're not using a sifter or a drainer. It's just by absorption from on a paper towel. So you're not using any vessel to separate for you, so that's allowed. That would be allowed. But when you squeeze something, then even though what remains in your hand is the schnitzel that you're squeezing out the oil from it, so we would think that's considered good from bad, because we said what's left on top is what's being separated from what goes down. So why should that be borer? The answer is because by squeezing, you're showing that you want to, by force, get the oil out. So you're working on the fact that the oil comes out of the schnitzel, and therefore it's considered that you're separating the oil from the schnitzel, not the schnitzel from the oil. Unlike the paper towel situation, you just place it like that, just placed it and let the oil get absorbed, that would be okay. Okay, so it should have been borer. I'm trying to, until now, we're backing the position that it's borer. But the Magen Avraham holds that it isn't borer. How come? For a totally different reason. He says that since the oil got absorbed in the schnitzel, it really became part of the schnitzel. And we said that min echad, when we have one type of food only, like 10 apples, which are all edible. If one is completely rotten, then it's no longer considered the same type, because these are apples and this is completely rotten. It's not an apple anymore almost. That's not good. But if you have large and small apples, you can separate them one from the other as much as you'd like. Because with one type of food, there's no borer. So if you have, let's say, 7 large apples and 3 small ones, and you would like only the small ones, you can pick them out of the 10 apple pile, and even leave it to use 10 hours later. It's not borer at all. You don't need to care about all the halachos of borer. Immediacy, even by a kli, by utensil, it's not borer at all, because it's all one type, big and small. That's not borer. So says the Magen Avraham that when the oil is absorbed in the schnitzel, it's as if it's all one thing. It's one food. It's only schnitzel. So you can now squeeze it out because it's like cutting the schnitzel in 2. That's all it is. It's not like 2 different ingredients, 2 different components mixed together. It's all one thing. It's all one schnitzel. So you can even squeeze it out. It's not boring at all. And then it can be for later on. It doesn't be for immediate use, because that's the idea, that it's all one food, one type. So therefore, there's no borer involved. So I would guess that better not to, between these 2 opinions. It doesn't say the final halacha on this. But even the second opinion that we said that it is borer, because it doesn't hold that it's all like one schnitzel, one piece of food, it's all the same food. It's still oil and schnitzel, meaning oil and chicken mixed together. And therefore it is borer because you're squeezing to get it out. So you're showing that you're extracting the bad from good. So he said that's borer. But even he allows it le'altar. For immediate use, he allows it. Although it's hard for me to understand, if it's borer because it's bad from good, you're separating bad from good, then it shouldn't have been allowed even le'altar. Don't quite get this opinion. It seems like it's going like a compromise. Kalkalat Shabbat says this. It's like compromising whether it's really borer or not, because it's like maybe one piece of food, like we said before in the Magen Avraham. Maybe he's not sure himself. So he says, you can squeeze it, providing you use it for immediate use. You're doing it for immediate use. You're going to eat it within the hour. We said immediacy before a meal is an hour. And you're not using a utensil. You're using your hand to squeeze it. So after all, so let's put it this way. If you're going to do it for immediate use, it's allowed no matter what. And if you want to prepare for a few hours later, you want to prepare where you're going to serve and squeeze all the schnitzels out before you serve them, then better not. Meaning better to do it within the hour of serving and not more so. Okay, let's go on. Another situation. Sometimes we have a pile of nuts. Some nuts have shells, like fistuk. What is that in English? Fistuk, the green nut that has a strong shell on it.
Pistachio.
Pistachio, thank you. Thank you, pistachios, right. We can go for any types of nuts with shells. When we have the whole bag full, so obviously you can't reach to take some of them are broken shells. The shells already fell off of the nut. You find sometimes some nuts, you're very pleased to find such nuts because you don't have to work hard on cracking them open and getting them out. So we're happy when we get those that are already out of the shell. But the shells we don't want. So obviously you cannot take the shells out of the pile of nuts because that's bad from good. Even for immediate use and only your hands, no utensils, still doesn't matter. Bad from good is enough to not allow us to do it no matter what. We mustn't, we're forbidden no matter what because it's bad from good. So you have to serve the whole pile, including those shells that have no nuts in them. You can't pick them out and throw them in the garbage before you serve, before you bring to the table the nuts. The only way, by the way, to do so, if you want to yet take it out, is by taking out all that's around it, like 5 or 6 pistachios together with that shell, the empty shell. Take around 5 or 6 of them that are all around it, scoop them all out, and put them back into the bag. Then it's okay, because what are you doing then? You're not removing bad from good. You haven't separated the bad from the good at all. They remain together. What have you done? You've separated good from good, because the surrounding nuts, pistachios that were around that shell, are actually combined. They're touching or mixed together with the other nuts that are okay, that have that they're whole with the shell and the nut inside. So now you're just separating good from good. Within the good of the scooping out that you just scooped out, within that there's also a bad shell. You don't need it. You're not separating it from the rest of the stuff. Therefore, you can take out that small pile and put it back into the bag. So you'll be scooping out in several places where you see a shell that's not that's inedible. You'll be scooping it out with some good nuts around it, and then you're okay. That's a way to do it if you'd like to get rid of it before you serve. But what happens if you're eating alone or just with the immediate family? You just dump the whole thing in a bowl and you bring it to the table. Or a kid wants to eat, or an adult wants to eat straight from the bag. What happens if we're just reaching into the pile, we take something in our hand and we suddenly notice that it's just a shell? So we've taken bad from good. Have we done borer? So the answer is no. We haven't transgressed the Isur borer, even though that's what we actually did, because we happened to have reached and picked up just a shell that's empty. But since we didn't intend on doing borer, it just came out by chance, sort of. So it's davar shelo mitkaven. We didn't have an intent to separate. And the davar shelo mitkaven, which isn't psik reisha, meaning it's not something that must happen. Rather, it can or cannot. Not every time you reach into the pile and take something, we hold on to an empty shell. Sometimes it's just the nut, or sometimes it's the nut with the shell. So it's not psik reisha. It doesn't have to happen, and we had no intent to do so. So that's so we're okay. We haven't transgressed any Isur. And by the way, the shell itself is muktzeh. So even from the point of view of muktzeh, before we even discuss borer, the point of view of muktzeh is problematic also. You're not allowed to lift a shell, an empty shell, even had it been, let's say, by itself. On the table, it fell off, and it's separate from the pile. So it's not borer anymore. You still can't lift the empty shell because it's muktzeh. There's no use. There's no use for an empty shell. So it's muktzeh. So if you've lifted it up in your hand, there are opinions that you can now, without let going of it, go directly to the garbage and throw it in the garbage. Otherwise, you can't move it with your hands. You have to use a to get it out. And then you have a problem with borer, so you need to get it out with some other nuts surrounding it.
What if you're, and I know it's probably under muktzeh than borer, you're out, or even your own home, and your own child left a mess of nuts and shells and things like that. Like they decided to eat, and then halfway they just left it on the table or on the plate, whatever. So how would be the most correct way
to clean it up?
Clean up, yeah.
Right. Yeah. So, right, you cannot separate even the good from bad in this case if you're about to put it away and not eat it. If you want to eat the good nuts that are in that mess, you want to pick and choose the good nuts, that's perfectly fine. That's not boring because you're doing it immediate use, without a utensil, good from bad. Those are the three criteria. Fine. But if you don't want to use them, you don't want to.
Or if you want to put it away for later for them to finish it, to eat it, but there's no point keeping only the rubbish. Keeping only everything, especially if, let's say, there's some klipa from a tangerine or something that will ruin it if it sits together. It has to be separated.
Okay, so that's not simple at all. Because if you don't want to use it immediately, it's just to keep it for later, for the next day. It could be for Sunday, Monday. Who knows?
No, it could be for later. They're just finished eating. They're running around. Hopefully, you'll get them to sit down within an hour, within 2 hours before Shabbat is out.
So within an hour, we said that's considered immediate. If within an hour they'll be eating it, then you could take out the good from bad. Keep the good. The bad you can't lift with your hand. You take a knife or a fork and shove it onto a plate. As we mentioned once, better yet, if on the plate there's another teaspoon that's there, something on that plate, so it shouldn't be but bitul kli meichano. There shouldn't be only muktzeh on the plate. It should be muktzeh plus a good thing on the plate. Then you shove it onto the plate and then bring it to the garbage and then lift up that spoon that was there and dump it into the garbage. That's fine.
Sorry, I'm just gonna piggyback on that. When you use plastic, let's say again, it's a children's scenario. They're sitting at their little kiddie table with disposables. And you need to pick out the vegetables that they bit and put all around the table, and pieces of challah. Everything is going to go into rubbish. And should you take your plate off the table, which is real plate, since everything you're going to be gathering from kids' table is disposable and goes straight in the bin. So I'm assuming even picking up that plate with leftovers would be problematic because it's all rubbish.
Right. I mean, you're saying that to lift up the
It's muktzah, no?
Chad Pa'ami plate with the rubbish on it could be muktzah. Reb Shlomo Zalman says, like you said exactly now, that even the disposable plate is muktzah, so you can't even lift up that plate. But we have two ways to deal with it. One is graf shel rei. The fact that no one can bear such a mess in their living room or dining room area when they're planning on using that room for reading, playing, talking. They don't want to see this whole mess on the table. So it's disgusting to you. So that's graf shel rei. As long as you're planning on using that room. If it's towards the end of Shabbat, then no, you can't. Anyway, you can't remove it because of Chana. He said he can't prepare for a weekday for Motzei Shabbat on Shabbat. So you can't remove all the stuff from the table after Sudash Lishit before Shabbos is over. But from the point of view of Muktzeh, so graf shel rei means if you're planning on sitting around that in that room after the meal, then it's disgusting to see all that rubbish on the table. So you're allowed to lift everything with your own bare hands, lift it all up, and bring it to the garbage because it's graf shel rei, because it's, although it's muktzeh, but it's so terrible that Chazal allowed lifting that muktzeh and putting it into the bin. So that's one way to solve the issue of a disposable.
Would that also imply if you're in someone's house as a guest and you're helping them tidy up their house?
Yes, because graf shel rei is enough that one person is disgusted by it. Everyone can help that person get at ease, become at ease, and not have to see all this mess and garbage in their room, in their house. Yes, so you can also help them, even though you're personally not planning on staying on and schmoozing and reading and doing stuff. You're planning on leaving. But for the Baal Bayit, who is planning on staying in that room later, you can help them get rid of the rubbish because for them it's graf shel rei. Yes. It's enough that for one person in the room it's disgusting, everyone can help get rid of it. Okay, so that's a solution. Another solution would be if the plate has, besides the rubbish, it also has like a teaspoon or a fork or a knife, which isn't chad pa'ami. So then the plate becomes basis ledavar asur v'mutar. Well, actually.
But if you don't have if it is chad pa'ami plate, you just wouldn't have real cutlery on the table for the kids.
Right.
Do you specifically take from adult plate a spoon or whatever to put it?
Right. Place it on in order to be able to remove the plate. Yes, that's what I meant. That's exactly what I meant. To bring from the adults and place it on that plate in order to remove the plate and throw in the garbage. Yes, that works too, because it's now holding both rubbish and a usable object. So therefore, now it's not nullified to the muktzeh. There's an issue with that, but okay. In any case, even the first answer is terrific. The fact that it's very highly unpleasant to see this in your living room or dining room area, you're allowed to definitely get rid of it just because of that. Okay. So back to, so we were talking about the nuts. So, so you had asked if there's the whole mess that the kids left after eating some of the nuts and leaving over some and some of the shells and all that mixture, how do we get rid of that? So if we're gonna seat them down and have them eat more of it later on, so we can separate within an hour, we can separate actually the good from bad and then throw all the bad away onto a plate and throw it into the garbage. with something that's useful on that plate as well, and then we're fine. But what happens if they're not going to eat later on, meaning it's for much later? You want to separate the nuts from the shells for much later on. That's not possible because you're doing borer. It said borer, one of the conditions is for immediate use. And this isn't for immediate use. So even if you're taking good from bad with your hands, it still doesn't complete all three criteria to be non-borer. So what can you do then? It's all mixed. So obviously one way is to get it all into the bag, including the shells and everything that's around it, and get it all into the bag, which it's not pleasant, and it's sometimes, like you said, can ruin the nuts if it has, like the clementine peels or things like that, could ruin the nuts if they're left in the bag together with the nuts. That's not a very good solution. The obvious way, as we said many, many times, is to sort of throw them in a way that they're totally separate. Everything becomes separate from one another, and then you pick and choose the good nuts, and all the rest you can throw in the garbage, again, by shoving it with a knife onto a plate with something good on that plate as well, and then bring it to the garbage and throwing it in the garbage. That's always a good solution. Just in this case, you can't just gather everything and throw it, or just scatter it as is push it with your hands, because you can't touch the shells because they're muktzeh. You have to scatter it with a fork or a knife, like push it away with a fork or a knife and let it all scatter around. And then you can pick and choose good from bad, and you're fine. And then you gather all the garbage, and all the rubbish, and put it in the garbage. That's one solution that always works. Normally in such cases, we would tell you, like I said before, if in the bag or in the bowl or on your plate you have some empty shells, then you take the surrounding nuts and put all that back into the bag, and then you're not doing borer. But here in your case, that doesn't help. That's not useful at all, this solution. Because if it's a whole mess, then you're taking most of the good nuts that are surrounding the shells back into the bag, so you're not helping yourself. In the end, you're having the whole mixture all put together. It won't do the job for you. So the only way I can think of is the tossing of it to all directions to make them non-mixture. It's a non-mixture, then you can pick and choose whatever you want. That's the only solution I can think of in this case. A very good, very practical and frequent situation that can come up. Okay, let's go on to another case. Okay, peeling. I'm not sure this is so important. You know what? Maybe yes. Maybe yes. This can come up also. It's quite practical. Peeling peanuts. Peanuts have their external shell, the one that you sometimes buy with two peanuts together. They look like an 8 with the hard shell. And sometimes you just get them with a brown, thin shell, not even a shell, skin, I would say. Thin skin covering the peanut itself. So, firstly, to remove the nut from a shell, why isn't that dash? Before we get into borer, why isn't that dash? The same as the kernel of wheat was pressed upon by the ox or a donkey that trumpeted on it and burst out got out the kernel from the chaff. Why isn't that the same as breaking into the shell of the nut and getting the nut out of the shell? Why isn't that dash? Before you talk about borer, the answer says the Eglei Tal, a very brilliant answer he has for this. He says the difference is, where is that done normally? What's the meaning of that? Meaning is, anything that's done in the field or in the manufacturing process is dash. When is the chaff removed from the kernels? In the field, in a warehouse. It's not done in people's homes. At home, they want to get just the flour. After the entire process was done already to it, they want to get the flour. They're interested in the flour. So anything that's done in the fields or in a factory or whatever, outside of home, that's dash. But anything that's done normally in our house, on the table, or in the kitchen to prepare, to bring it out to the table, anything that's done there, that's no longer dash. That's a way to eat. We're eating, we're not processing it. Processing is out in the field or outdoors somewhere. Here we're just eating. The intent is to eat, and we can't eat with the shell on top of it. So it's not dash. It's a way to eat. It's a form of eating. That's a very brilliant answer, the Egli Tal. But therefore, to be aware that if it's a type of shell or skin or something surrounding a food that's normally taken care of before it gets to our house, and only rarely do we get to have a nut with that type of shell. For example, almonds. Almonds have 3 shells to them. They have the brown skin, thin skin that covers them. They have the outer shell, which we many times buy our almonds with that outer shell that we easily crack and get out the almond. And there's a 3rd shell, which people aren't so much aware of, a green, thick, surrounding to the brown, stiff shell, which is surrounding the brown skin on top of the almond. Three different protections it has. So the outer green one is normally not done at home. We don't get them in our homes. We don't buy them in that manner. We buy them when it was already peeled from the green outer shell. So therefore, that cannot be done on Shabbat. If you do get an almond with that green, thick skin surrounding the hard shell, so you cannot remove it on Shabbat because that's dash. Since normally that part is removed in the fields or in the factory or whatever it's done, wherever it's done. That's a brilliant idea of the Egli Tal, the friendship between dash and eating. That's how we eat our food. So that's from the point of view of dash. What about borer? The fact that we're peeling off what's around it. So the answer to that is that we said that from the point of view of bad from good, the fact that we're peeling away, we're peeling this shell, we're breaking the shell off of or here we're talking about the skin, the brown skin, thin skin around the peanut. The peeling off are allowed because we said all peeling is not considered bad from good. It's considered reaching the good. We can't reach it without peeling. Normally, borer, when is it applicable? When we have a mixture of foods, we can eat the good from bad. We can eat from the chicken and leave over the rice. Even if they're combined together, we can find the pieces of chicken. Then we don't have to remove the rice. But in this case, since it's surrounding the yes.
Would that also be considered, like you said, like almonds, hazelnuts, walnuts, where they are usually in a hard shell?
Right.
And a way to crack that hard shell would be with a tool, yet would that be considered extension of your arm, that tool, or not? Like a
yes.
nutcracker.
Nutcracker, yes. A nutcracker is an extension to your hand, yeah. It's meant to break it's not meant to even separate. It doesn't separate for you the shell from the nut. It just cracks it open. Then you have to after it's cracked open, you have to separate it. So it's not dealing with the separation, it's dealing with the breaking into. That's why you're allowed. The question was excellent. It should have been, we said even the permission to peel off anything that's surrounding a food because we can't get into it, which is not borer, that's true only from the point of view of bad from good. It's not considered bad from good. It's considered we're getting into the good. But the other 2 components of le'altar, it has to be for immediate use within an hour, and no tools, that still remains. So how come we're allowed to use a nutcracker? We're not allowed to use a utensil that separates. The answer is because that doesn't separate, it just breaks into it. Then we have to separate ourselves, the good from bad. So that's allowed. Yes, a nutcracker is allowed. So we're learning now, we're saying now that for immediate use and with your hands, you're allowed to peel off the brown skin, thin skin on the peanut. If you'd like to on Shabbat, you're allowed to peel it off. It's not dash because it's normally done in the house. And it's not borer because it's peeling and not separating. It's peeling in order to get to the food and not separating bad from good. All those points of view, you're allowed to peel that brown away from the peanut. Another very interesting, within this peanut situation, halacha, very interesting halacha. And now this may be a little surprising to us, but that's very clear halacha, Shin Tet Seif Yud, which will lead us to a very important leniency in borer now. It says in Shin Tet Seif Yud, in the Shulchan Aruch, 319, Seif 10. It says that if you have a cup of wine, let's say, or a cup of juice or water, whatever, and there's some tiny pieces of cork, let's say, floating on the wine. Sometimes we open the cork, so tiny pieces, small pieces, fall into the bottle, and as we pour from the bottle, they're floating on the wine there. So the Shulchan Aruch discusses this situation and asks, is this borer to remove just those small pieces away from the wine? Presumably it should be borer. If we take it together with a whole tablespoon of wine, then okay. As we said, when we take good and bad away from good, that's fine. We're not taking only the bad from good, we're taking good and bad from good, so that's fine. But if we're just taking away, we're trying to catch just those pieces of cork that are floating and throw them away, that's bad from good. How can we do such a thing? Instead of the Shulchan Aruch, he's still allowed to do so. And in this case, you're even allowed to do so b'meshameret, which is a sifter. You can even allow it to go through a sifter and let the wine go through and have the cork pieces remain on top, and then you have clear wine. Why are we allowed to do this? Why is it not boring with a cleave? How can that be? So the Shulchan Aruch explains, based on the Gemara, of course, that in this case, it depends. It depends. Only if majority of the people in the world would drink the wine as is. They wouldn't mind at all that there are these small, tiny cork pieces floating on the wine. Only then is it not borer. How come? Because a person who's now taking it, removing it away, it's not really because he cares that it should be that it's there. He prefers a little bit. If he's the type of person that would never ever drink such a wine with those tiny cork pieces floating on it, crumbs of cork floating on it, then it's really borer for him. It's really borer, even though he's singled out from the majority of people that don't care about it. But if he's a person who's an istanis, we call it istanis, person who's very careful not to eat anything that's not pleasing to him, so then it's actual borer. But there's some type of...
is that smoke or reflection?
Yeah, I don't know what that is. No, it's not smoke in the house. I don't know where it's coming from. That's weird. Okay. Leave it be. There's no smoke in the room at all here. I don't smell anything. Okay, I'll tell you soon if there's a problem. I don't know what that is. It suddenly jumped into the screen. I don't know, maybe from the outside someone is lighting something. Anyhow, we're almost done anyhow. Sorry, we're talking about... I just lost my train of thought. Yes. The wine and the cork. The cork pieces floating on the wine. So if normally people don't care at all to drink it that way, and this person also doesn't really care. Normally he wouldn't care. Just now it's a little bit uncomfortable for him. He wants to remove it anyhow. He's allowed to on Shabbat because it's considered as if it's a nullified to the wine, it's not even a piece of its own, even though he's removing it. It's a little funny, but the concept is, if you're willing to drink it down together with the wine, then it's not considered at all something separate from the wine, so you're not really separating. It's all like part of the wine. Like we said before, that the absorbed oil in the schnitzel, there's one opinion that says, in Magen Avraham, he says it's all like part of the schnitzel. So it's not considered separating bad from good. It's like cutting the schnitzel into pieces. So here too, it becomes part of the wine. It's not considered separating bad from good. If it's an istanis, a person who really, really is careful not to eat anything that is displeasing and he's very, very delicate in that manner, then he cannot remove it. Because then it's really bad for him. And he would never drink that cup of wine the way as is, so he cannot remove it. So that's from wine. Now, going back to, and this will conclude the shiur, going back to the peanuts with the thin skin, brown thin skin around them. So besides what we said before, that it's you're allowed to peel them away because it's surrounding the whole peanut and it's not considered borer. Besides that, it's also allowed because majority of people eat their peanuts with that brown skin, or a lot of people do. So again, if it's not a very extra delicate person who would never think of doing so, and they want to peel it away on Shabbat, they're allowed to also for that reason. Because it's normally eaten together with the peanuts, so it's not considered a separate entity, and therefore not considered separating bad from good. Okay. So that's to conclude that, and to finish off with the same concept in a very relevant situation as well. So no, first of all, to explain, this doesn't mean that, let's say if you have soup with some vegetables and one of the vegetables you don't like so much, this doesn't mean you can take away the vegetable you don't want. Because we said, even if it's both edible foods, but one you want to remove because you don't like it, and the other one you want it to remain and eat it, that's considered bad from good. Even though it's not rubbish, it's not garbage, it's not going into the garbage. You're going to serve it to someone else or let someone else eat it. But it's considered borer unless you're giving it right now to someone else to eat. That's fine. But if you're not, you're putting it away in the fridge and someone else will eat it later on, that's borer. Why isn't it like this wine with the cork, floating tiny cork crumbs, or the thin skin over the peanut? Why isn't it the same? We would eat the soup. Most of the world would eat the soup together with everything that's inside. So true, we said that if a person himself is so delicate and istanis that he's so careful not to eat anything that he doesn't like, so then it's borer for him. But let's say you're not at that point. You're not in the stage of hating that vegetable. Just for now, you prefer not to eat it. Normally, you would have eaten it. And most people would have eaten it. So why isn't it nullified to the soup? And then you could remove it alone. Why isn't it like that those cork pieces or the skin over the thin skin over the peanut? So the answer is because there, it's definitely two separate entities. No one can say that the carrots in the soup are nullified to the soup because everyone eats it together. We still can distinguish easily and well between the carrots and the potatoes and the chicken and everything that's in the soup. So this definitely would not allow us to remove the carrot that we would not like to eat right now, consume right now, because even though normally we would eat it together with it, it's not really bothering us, but it's a separate entity for sure. Whereas the cork pieces or the thin skin over the peanut don't have a separate entity of their own. So they are nullified to the main, and therefore it's not considered borer when you want to remove them from there. And same would be true if you have, let's say, if you squeezed an orange and some pieces fell in, and you do not want to eat those pieces of orange that fell into your juice. You want a more clear juice. So Reb Shlomo Zalman says that you're allowed to separate between the two, and so does Reb Moshe Feinstein. They're both allowed to separate because here they use the same concept as the cork, small pieces of cork or the skin of the peanut brown thin skin, because here they're saying that most people would drink it together with those pieces. And here it does get nullified. It's really a functioning as part of the juice, because it's the same juice. It's orange juice with some tiny, small pieces of orange that fell in by mistake. And you want to make it clear. So this you're allowed to sift. And we said in these cases, yes?
No, I have a question, but I'll wait until you finish.
Okay, so I'll just finish the sentence. In these cases, you're even allowed to use a sifter to sift it. That's what the Shulchan Aruch says in Shin Yutet Sif Yud by the wine, because it's all like one entity, and you're not sifting. So it doesn't have its own name of psolet, of bad. It's all part of the same thing, and therefore you can even use a sifter to clear the juice if it's just a few pieces there that people would normally drink, and you just prefer not to, not because you're disgusted by it, but just now you prefer you prefer not having those chunks of fruit. You're allowed to sift them even with a sifter. Okay, yes, your question, Leah?
What if you are plating soup for a child and you put the carrot in there and you bring it to their table and they don't want the carrot?
Right.
Are you able to put it back in the soup pot while you still, first, let's say you're serving the kids first, then you're going to serve rest of the guests and whoever, that there is a chance, obviously, that carrot will go into yours or your guest's dish, but it could be it's not. It's just going to get lost with the rest pieces of the carrots. Are you able to take it out without any juice or without anything at all? And the second question was about the juice, the piece of a pit. If it falls into it, let's say you're making a lemon, you're dressing a salad with a lemon, and a piece of a lemon seed fell in. Do you have to take it out together with some of your lettuce and whatever else and just bin it, or are you able to try to take it out? I guess you have to take it out with lemon.
Right. In both cases, so in the first case with the carrot, you cannot remove just that carrot and put it back into the pot, because, like you said before, it may happen. It may so be that carrot will never be eaten during that meal. So you've done borer deoraita. You've taken out the carrot from the soup without using it by someone else eating it within that same meal. So it's not allowed. You could wait for the next person to be served who likes the carrot, and then remove from the kid's plate into the adult or a different kid who likes carrots, move it into their plate. And then you know that it's going to be consumed during that meal, and then it's fine. Or otherwise, you cannot return it back into the pot, because you may, in the end, not fish it out as you're serving, and may remain in the pot, and then you've done boreh. You had to give it to someone else to eat in their plate and not back into the pot. Unless, as we said last week, the carrot is, well, it depends. If it's sliced, it could be smaller than a walnut. We said but then it also has to be that all the rest is clear soup, besides that one piece or a few pieces of carrot, which are larger than a walnut. A solid larger than a walnut within a liquid is not considered bor at all. Then you can just remove it because it's very distinguishable. But if it's smaller than a walnut, or if there are other vegetables in the bowl, then you're considered bor between the carrot and the other vegetables. You can't do that.
So something like, let's say, a chicken neck, which is bigger than the walnut. Yes. I can, if by mistake it fell into the kid's soup, I can just take it out and put it back. Like if it got into the ladle.
It's larger than the walnut, true, but that's only true when it's in the bowl, only clear water, clear soup, and this neck. But if there are other pieces that are smaller, or if all the pieces there are larger than walnut, then it's fine. But if there are pieces that are smaller than a walnut and pieces that are larger than a walnut, then it doesn't help anymore. Because then that's considered a mixture. Actually, between the solids, no, sorry, between the solids, you can't remove even if they're larger than a walnut. Let's say you have the chicken neck plus potatoes, carrots, all in that same bowl. Doesn't matter. Even if the potatoes and carrots are also larger than a walnut, you still cannot remove the neck because the neck can be removed only if it's clear soup and the neck. That's it. The moment there are other chunks of solids in that same bowl, so you're removing, so true, from the neck from the soup is okay, from the liquid. But the neck from the carrots or the neck from the potatoes or the neck from the greens that are there, those are solids. So you can't remove solid from solid. Then you're again borer. So yeah, the only way to get it out is to serve it to someone else that would eat it and put it in their bowl. Otherwise, unless it's just the neck and clear soup, then you're perfectly fine with taking out the neck, putting it back into the bowl, into the pot, without anyone consuming it. You're still okay doing
right.
that.
This is about the pot, but when you already put it in the soup bowl, it's just the liquid and the piece of chicken or piece of neck or piece of, are you able to
fine.
take it out from the bowl
Yes.
then?
Yes. No, I was talking about the bowl before. Sometimes in the bowl, you serve the kid the clear soup plus the neck that by mistake fell in, plus some other solids. Maybe they like some of the vegetables or...
No, I mean, our vegetables in the soup are literally huge chunks that nothing comes into the kids' bowls besides the liquid.
Besides the liquid? Aha.
I literally
Okay.
just like made soup now. I put the whole onion, I put the whole sweet potato because nobody eats it. And then I cut the carrot just in halves.
Aha. That's how you do
Literally chunks
Wow.
in my house.
Okay.
So technically I could then in this case, if for some reason something fell into the bowl that I didn't want them to have,
Right.
since it's just literally liquid and
a big chunk?
solid and big, like let's say big knedel or potato. I mean, I don't use potatoes, so carrots that I can just take it out.
Right. Correct. Exactly.
And I don't need to take out with liquid or anything else,
No,
just on its own.
nothing
Fine.
else. That's
Thank you.
again, larger than a walnut. Within liquid, only one chunk solid. And liquid, you're allowed to remove it no matter what, even if you're not going to use it immediately. It's not considered a mixture. That's the idea. And if it's not a mixture, there's no borer.
Thank you.
You can take it out. It's like we said with the pickles, you're allowed to pour out all that liquid from the pickle jar because all the pickles are larger than a walnut. And you're not separating within the pickles themselves, they're all one type. So there's no separation between that and the others. So you can take out a pickle from there and put it for 5 hours later, and it's okay. Or you can pour out the water into the sink, that liquid there, get it out, it's okay. Because all these cases are larger than walnut, in a liquid, no borer. And amongst the pickles themselves is no borer because it's the same type. You can take out a large one or a small one and put wherever you want. That's all the same idea, all these concepts that we just discussed, it all falls into place in this case also.
Thank you.
Okay, welcome. There was a second question, what was it?
It's about the pit in the salad.
All right, the
Maybe
pit in the
let's
salad,
do it
this-
next time. I feel
Yeah,
bad for taking up more of your time.
Yeah, right, no, that's the simple answer. It's only if you take out a whole bunch of food around it, and then you could even keep it in a small container for eating it after Shabbos. But you can't just take out the pit itself. That for sure is borer d'oraita. That's bad from good. That's the way to deal with the pit. Yeah, the only way. Or eat around it. You eat around it.
What was the question? What was the question?
A pit of lemon that fell into a salad. How do you get rid of it?
Oh,
So either you
but
eat
let's
it-
say you put the avocado pip on top of the avocado salad, that's fine because it's, you know, sometimes you make an avocado salad and to keep that avocado salad, like the guacamole from being
black?
black, you can put the pip back on the salad, and then when you want to serve the salad, you take away the pip and then put it on the table. Is that a problem?
Oh, wow. I never heard of that. I never heard that helps not blackening the avocado by placing
I've also heard people they would put the pit in a cup of water, even though they're not connected physically, somehow it's meant to be helpful. I never used it. And as well, I would think it will be a problem putting a pit in the water. It's like watering it, even though it probably won't grow until you chuck it out. You'll chuck it out straight after the meal if you don't use it. Like if you have no leftovers.
Yeah, oh, I get it. You want to save it for leftovers, and if you have, you'll use it. If not, you'll throw it in the garbage.
Well, no, I don't think it's for leftovers. I think there is some connection meant to be between the pit, even though it's not connected to the plant anymore.
Wow.
I've never done it, but I have seen friends who have.
Do that? Wow. So on Shabbat, to put it into water is problematic because it can grow roots.
Right. I mean, you will take it out after a meal because you won't need it anymore because there will be no more guacamole left.
Right. Yeah, I guess. Yes, it's not so bad. It's not like placing flour into water, which you're not allowed to do on Shabbat. It's different here. You're not at all planning, and it shouldn't necessarily happen that it starts growing because of that. That would be okay. To put it into water would be okay. But to place the pit on the avocado salad itself, first
you could take out a bit of salad as well. Maybe you could that
would have to
throw it out.
Right, the entire layer underneath you would have to scrape away. Not very thin. It has to be somewhat considered a layer of the salad to take away with the pit, and then later on you can eat it alone without. Like to get underneath it and eat from it and not the pit when you're in the kitchen alone, and you can do it, or after Shabbat, just get the pit away and eat the rest of the salad you took away. But just to take the pit off would not be simple unless it's like peeling, but it's not because it's not covering the whole salad.
No, but it's like the same as, let's say you put garnishes on top of food. So let's say you've put a lemon and a cucumber on top of a piece of fish to decorate it. And then you're giving it and then you're serving it, and then somebody, you can't eat a lemon the same way you can't eat an avocado pip. So
so you do.
I don't know what.
Yeah, could be that it's like peeling. That's what I thought a moment ago by the avocado pit as well. That it's like peeling, because it's bothersome to reach underneath and eat the fish. It's underneath the pit. It's different than, that's the difference. The lemon pit that fell into a salad, no one can say that that's covering the salad, that you can't reach the salad. You can easily eat around it and underneath it very easily. You don't need to get to the salad. Whereas by the avocado pit, since it's large, and the lemon, they're large. So by them, it's considered a mixture that you're separating. Rather, it's considered to reach under them and get to the food. So that's like peeling, which is not borer. Right, that would be the difference. Therefore, those two are allowed, but you have to make sure, but by the pit, it's muktzeh. So you can't handle it with your hands. Always have to handle it with a spoon, a tablespoon, or something that holds onto it and puts it on or removes it. You can't move it with your hand because of muktzeh issue. Muktzeh, it's not useful in any way. But from the point of view of borer, that could be allowed because it's large and it's bothering you to get to the food under it. So it's called kiluf, called peeling, and that's why it will be allowed. Okay, very good. Wow, we extended this time, but it's very practical.
Thank you so much. Shabbat shalom.
Okay, you're very welcome. Shabbat shalom v'varach. Lina, I'll send the recording in a few days.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Shabbat shalom.
Okay, you're welcome. Call too. Bye.